good afternoon and welcome to Senior Boulevard TV. This afternoon we have foreseen a different type of expert on the spot interview, as I will be the one being interviewed. I've met recently Ana Sepulveda, and she is quite active on the Portuguese market, and we both found it interesting to have a particular focus on the Portuguese market, and how in particular myself as an outsider am looking to this market opportunity. Ana has been for many years active as Aging 2.0 ambassador, which is one of the largest aging networks in the world. So without any further ado, let's jump into the interview and enjoy it.
Alex, tell me a little bit about you, and for those who don't know it, to get a better perspective of who is Alex Grootman.
Yes, and thanks again for being this time the host, and I really appreciate that you're willing to do this. So to start off, I'm a Belgo-Swiss. I'm living more than 16 years already in Switzerland. And I originally come from the finance industry. I worked for the biggest hedge fund administrator in the world. That also made me move to Switzerland. So I've always had a very strong passion about an interest in finance and technology and innovation in general, but also the link between financial sustainability and also social awareness and social values. And across the years of my career, I've always saw that there were always two sides. You have really people, socially oriented people, and very financial driven, profitably driven people. And in order to make any project sustainable and long lasting, you need to connect the dots. And that is really where the core of my passion lies. So therefore I created a new brand in senior living, which is called Tria Viva. And basically what we're doing there is trying to assemble as much as we can all the different best practices that we notice in different countries, and bringing again this care industry and all the aspects surrounding it, as well as the finance industry together, as well as, of course, in the case of senior living, the real estate industry. What I noticed there is that those are quite conservative industries, and therefore really lacking a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship. And that's a little bit what I'm passionate about, what I want to bring. And that's why I created at the time Senior Boulevard TV, to really push this awareness, all the innovation forward, to better help people that want to bring these two industries, the finance as well as the social care industry, together.
To spread knowledge.
Indeed, and that's because the better the knowledge is spread, the better it is for us, obviously, and the more better we can actually create value. If you have to spend your days all day explaining what is actually possible, yeah, it's for all the actors and industries that are involved, it's quite a cumbersome undertaking. We just want to help that a tiny bit through Senior Boulevard TV.
You probably know that Portugal is trying to be known as the European Florida. Taking in consideration this, we are talking about senior living and senior habitat and everything. What's your opinion about Portugal, or how Portugal is perceived abroad?
Yeah, now, first of all, I live already in a country which has a very strong community of Portuguese. So Switzerland today has more than 250,000 residences. We have, especially in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, we have an extreme high amount. I think it's the third largest expat community in Switzerland. Whether it's teachers, doctors, physicians, care people, daycare providers, so much Portuguese community is embedded in our Swiss community. So it's hard for us not to have a strong focus on them. So because they're very present here in the region. So that's already triggered my interest pretty strongly. And because of that, we hear a lot about Portugal. So even though I don't live in Portugal, through my friends, neighbors, all these people that I'm day-to-day involved with, we hear a lot. And we hear a lot about initiatives that are undertaken from the Portuguese community. And I might say that they're quite extremely socially and care engaged. They're very friendly people. And yeah, I see that also with the whole fiscal policies that the Portuguese government has undertaken the last decades, we see more and more people moving to Portugal. So what we hear about in the past, the fiscal undertakings specifically towards seniors, but also what I hear more and more, that also politicians are really more actively are moving towards senior living. This has really, I should say, generated a lot of attention of us, and we're really digging into it. On top of that, you have to also take into consideration is that we do have a strong senior housing deficit in Switzerland. And Switzerland at the same time has an extreme high cost of living in general, besides even senior living. So we really see this tendency about whether it's the Portuguese or others, but certainly for the Portuguese to move back to the country of origin. So they come and live here and then go back. So by nature, we see there is a huge opportunity building those string links between Portugal and Switzerland. And thanks to our exchanges, Anna, I see also from a local perspective, there's quite some exchanges. So all of this added together, yes, as well as from a private as well as business perspective, yes, I'm really looking at, together with Triaviva, more and more closely with to the senior market potential in Portugal, yes.
So do you think that Portugal might be perceived as the European Florida? If
yeah, absolutely. I think you've gathered all the different elements. Obviously, I have to admit also from a fiscal perspective, your authorities have already been doing quite a lot of work on that in the last decade. Second, you have obviously the climate. You have the quality of life, you know, and on top of that, yeah, you have the cost of living aspect. And fourth and fifth is that the Swiss, like the Portuguese, I mean, we live on a daily basis very closely together with them, and we share a lot of cultural aspects together. So we have a lot of things in common. And I think also from a Swiss authority perspective, there is a quite large openness towards Portugal, especially also towards senior housing. So I think it has a tremendous potential on the European continent, yes.
But they don't come to live in any concept of, I'll call it ordinary concept of senior living. So if we have this good image and these good conditions, I remember from a previous conversation that we need to improve a little bit in terms of concepts, don't we?
Yes, and what adds to the complexity, I think, is that especially for the Portuguese that have lived quite so many years abroad, their preferences, tastes, I don't know, have changed because they have lived for quite some years abroad. That's for that segment of the market. For the local segment, yes, you do have quite some concepts that have been developed where pieces of it can certainly be integrated into the Portuguese market. And I think there also Senior Boulevard TV is trying to contribute to the max in providing these different types of insights, but as well as creating awareness already on the market opportunity. People just sometimes get stuck because they see, but that's one concept. No, there are tens of different concepts. You need to pick the piece that are the right one for the Portuguese market and that are aligned to what that specific segment of the market needs. And I think now the momentum is there to gather that and to integrate that into the Portuguese market, in my opinion.
You already mentioned Senior Boulevard TV. It's the project now that I'm being part of. Tell us a little bit about Senior Boulevard TV. Why did you create it? What are your objectives?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to launch it as it's a private non-for-profit initiative. Huh? So I've launched it to a non-profit association called Innofuel, who's based here in Switzerland. And basically it's, we're trying to bring as much as insights as possible. The senior housing industry is touching a magnitude of different types of industry that perhaps in first instance we don't think about. You know, if I just summarize quickly, you have the entire finance industry in terms of banks lending towards housing, as well as from the investor side, you know, as well as from the pension fund side, who do invest in that type of property and then rent it out. So there are already from the finance industries many different angles to look at it, senior housing. You have obviously the whole care aspect industry. So people that are active in industry that provide care or supportive care towards the senior housing industry. Many actors active, well up to doctors, nurses, hospitals. So it's quite a large ecosystem. You have obviously also the whole real estate industry with all its aspects, the promotion of the real estate, the commercialization of the real estate, the construction companies, you know, the architects that are looking for qualitative benchmarks for independent living. So a lot of different industry that we don't really address. And then I haven't even mentioned the technology industry, you know, the whole energy industry, heating, and today some people don't, or most of the people are not aware about the magnitude of it. That's exactly what we're trying to do with Senior Boulevard TV, because from the offering side, what, as you mentioned earlier, what already exists, there's so many different aspects in there already to address, but also from the demand side, every country, every region, every municipality is faced with different demographic challenges, preferences, care models that they're working with. And those aspects today have to be made visible in order to find exactly these right concepts in different. And again, as I mentioned, as this is such a fragmented landscape, we're trying just to put, as well as from the offering side, as well as from the demand side, all the different perspectives, so that any industry actor or public authority or any stakeholder in the industry could identify what's important for them or where his value proposition is into this industry. And that's basically what we're trying to do with Senior Boulevard TV. And the more it gets expanded, the more awareness is being created, well, the better it is for everybody, including ourselves also as being a private actor. So, but we're totally neutral, and we're just trying to make visible all the different solutions, including just also to stay home. Huh? Because there is just elderly just staying home wherever they are is also a growing market. Huh? So, and sometimes we forget when we talk about senior housing, and then at the end, what we added also is that we see that the hospitality industry, who is today facing a major challenge due to the pandemic, has, funny enough, to bring a lot into this industry in terms of infrastructure that sometimes specifically for business hotels is underutilized, and that perhaps with integrating for senior housing can be more utilized, but also all the services that they provide. If very important elements can be taken, lessons to be drafted, but also direct partnerships can be built. And therefore, all of these combined, that's why we created Senior Boulevard TV.
When did you create Senior Boulevard TV? How long ago?
I think we're now running about 6 months ago, so, that we are. So as you know, the formula is basically the experts on the spot interview, which is a half an hour to 40 minutes interview where we ask specific questions. And we have now about 300 followers. Depending on the type of interview, we now see that slowly but surely, which we very recently, two or 3 months ago, opened our YouTube channel. Some videos are being watched a few thousand times. So also that's starting to grow. And we have also noticed that the most watched videos are the shortest one. So what we do more and more frequently is that we take specific questions out of an interview and then publish them on social media. And those actually have the largest success. We just recently noticed that.
And in terms of your vision for the Senior Boulevard TV, when you start thinking and how do you see the project nowadays? How does this evolve? How do you compare the idea you had and what the reality shows you?
Mm-hmm. So my expectations when I launched Senior Boulevard, your question is related to mainly Senior Boulevard TV, right? Towards my expectations towards Senior Boulevard TV.
Yeah. Yes.
So my expectations were in the beginning just as a compensation for me not being to travel. So when we want to put a message across, you participate in a lot of conferences, physical conferences, you have to meet up agendas, hotels are being booked and so forth. And for more than a year or year and a half, I wasn't able to travel. So for me, my first objective was, how can we send as best the message out? Now, and basically what I started in investing in Senior Boulevard was actually my travel budget, and the reach that I've got to Senior Boulevard TV, because a lot of people still, they don't subscribe or but they just see all these information coming through mailing or through LinkedIn or through any platform. And then in the back, they contact me and we have a lot of interesting conversations. This is much greater than I've ever expected. Because today, in today's world, with making use of video and digital media platforms like Zoom, you can reach to such a large audience without, on a quite limited budget. So way beyond my expectations. Now, after the first 6 month lesson, we are just, taking our first conclusions on how to better use the social media. We just recently our YouTube, where we're completely not familiar with, and how can we, with the content we're assembling, even better reach a larger audience. And that is now the coming focus on the coming months.
I'd like to go back a little bit about talking about the market itself, the senior housing market. What's your opinion on that? How do you think that the market is moving forward?
I've also based myself, obviously, on all the expert interviews that we've gotten so far, and the summaries we sent out, is that there is overall alignment. Absolutely, the market is going to grow. No question about that. There is also a large alignment, which I share with, is that there is not one solution. When we talk about seniors, 65 plus, there are different segments in those, yes. And those segments are very hybrid. So it doesn't mean that you're looking for a solution for one segment, it's actually suitable for the other. So yes, growth in every different segment for every different type of needs, but that also generates risks. Those local needs can be different. A care system is different. Demographic segments are different, and a lot of cultural aspects come into play. So the overall needs are the same, but how to translate that into a local offering, that's where the big challenges lie. On top of that, in general, where there's also alignment is that, yes, the nursing homes have really suffered from an image problem due to the pandemic, and we see a great opportunity in lighter models. Some people can, with just a minimum amount of care, but the right design of housing concept, can perfectly grow old and stay independent for the rest of their lives using much lighter models. So therefore, on the operational side, we see a lot of countries that are advanced in providing lighter independent living models, where even sometimes people can be owner, continue to be owner or rent an apartment. So a lot of hybridity, lighter models, great potential growing there as well. And more we have to step away from the sickness perception.
Yeah.
We see that the first models in senior housing that came were actually nursing homes light, basically, where we have as a core perception towards the aging people is that they need of care, and you immediately go into the sickness, and that therefore everything you provide needs to be reimbursed. Well, that doesn't need to be, and you can come with very economically viable models, and at the same time keep that very affordable for the residents and their families. Top of that, you see this whole evolution of technology. As you know, technology has a huge deflationary impact. Today, built fully automated housing with much more energetic consumption is really, really the norm. We see obviously that the whole Europe is investing massively in that. You see that on, we have actually dedicated some interviews just on that on Senior Boulevard TV. And now the challenge is to put that in a combined solution. Scalable, adaptable to all these local needs, but also all these different aging segments. And I think that's now the next step. And that's slowly but surely that we want to make it visible on the platform. And that's what people can expect the coming months with Senior Boulevard TV.
Due to the vision that you have about the market, and the vision that you have about how it will evolve, what do you think that are the great trends and differences between countries that you are noticed?
Yeah, there's one big element that came out actually quite an interview is, and we actually dedicated one future program is that we have prepared. We've asked a lot of our experts, what do you think about rental versus buying? And why did we focus on that? Is that today, since the pandemic, there has been a overall awareness is that we are today living in a society with very low interests. And meaning that actually has two consequences. That has a first consequence is that the return on your assets will become more and more difficult. So earning from the assets you have will continue to be very low. But that actually has a other side to it, is that if you have assets today, that means that today your cost of living can be decreased. If, for instance, you're the owner of an apartment or a house, well, basically the interest payments will continue to be very low for a very long time. So therefore, the equilibrium between rental and buying has shifted the last few years very strongly towards buying because it's economically much more viable. If on the one hand you have assets that are generating low income for you, and at the same time you have to rent today at very high prices, whether if you would buy it or have a hybrid formula that we will also discuss on the platform, you will have cost of living. So the balance is strongly impacted due to the pandemic. And that's basically what we see. I live in a country where people have more tendency to to rent, where it's actually could be economically much more viable, especially for seniors that do have assembled some assets and some wealth for them to buy. And so that you see all this has become very visible, and people are actually asking, what should we then do as a supplier of these senior housing? What formulas could we integrate in order to make it very affordable for the resident on the long term and as well as their family? Another element is on regulation. To which extent should a government be involved and dictate qualitative measurements or not? We see some governments and local authorities as well as municipalities that say, we do quality labeling, but we won't be involved too much into the legislative framework. And other regions that today say, no, we really, if you don't follow our criteria, we basically don't allow you to be an operator or to build some kind of a senior housing rent. So really a lot of hybrid, and also that's what we're trying to make visible to Senior Boulevard TV, is that basically what exists and how can we to the max learn from one another and from the multi-perspective point of view as the residents, obviously, but also of any industry actor as well. So what are their experiences? Then we see also moving away from the strong institutionalization, whether that's private or public, towards lighter living models, you know. We see more and more very small initiatives occurring. That's also something a trend that we see everywhere, you know. Also, what we see in overall is that on the architectural norms, we see that there's more and more cohesion. That is quite coherent, so that the qualitative legal requirements that we put on the architectural norms are quite conforming. So if I compare most countries we're active in, they're quite aligned. So there is not that much difference in that. We see also strong lighter care models is very interesting for communities, municipalities that have a strong embedded home care presence. Mm. When that's present, independent housing is very interesting for housing development, if of course all the other criteria are in line. You know? But again, overall tendency is that a lack of awareness. So and every country has particular elements that it's more advanced than in another country. And therefore, it's so interesting to put this into an international perspective and to learn from one another. One element that I really see where Switzerland is really dominant is that we have a very well-structured government structure where, you know, the municipality has quite a powerful say into everything related to senior housing, in alignment with the cantonals and as well as at federal level. So that means that every local authority at whatever level they are is very familiar or very aware on what it should and should not do at their level. Mm-hmm. Where, for instance, you look at other countries that they have not clearly defined what you should be doing at regional level, local, and therefore, because it's not clear, it's also very hard for private entrepreneurs or initiatives to come with scalable solutions. You know, so those are basically the biggest trends, but also differences that I've seen so far with Senior Boulevard TV and out of our own experience.
Mm-hmm. It's just a note. It's quite interesting. You are talking about renting versus buying, because I was talking with a colleague another day about. I think it's not yet a report, but there are some conversations around the G7 and this economic forum, saying or promoting the concept of renting. And the question is, if we evolve on this, like 10 years from now, if nowadays buying a house or having a house is an asset, the next generation, if they don't do that, if they don't buy, if they don't have a property, mm-hmm. they might have some, I won't say problems, but difficulties in the future. You also mentioned this before in terms of the complexity of this industry, and but I'd like to go a little bit more in detail about the industries that are really inside of this, we shall say, small cluster of senior living. What are those industries that are heavily represented in the senior habitat? And in your opinion, how important is this for this potential, economical potential of the senior sector?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually a good question, because that's, in my opinion, one of the most important elements that is sometimes forgotten, and makes it at the same time very interesting, because if you have alignment on needs and types of offering in all these different segments, what the extent of industry today that can make a difference is enormous. So if you just look at the whole real estate industry, the architects, mm-hmm. you know, the urban planners, municipalities, you know, the construction companies themselves, so all the people that build kitchens, you know, bathrooms, you know, all different types of store, all the equipment, heating, ventilation, as you know, seniors tend to consume more energy than the other generations. The whole solar panel industry with regard to heating and making buildings energy neutral, especially in a context with higher energy consumption, how to integrate all those batteries into the infrastructure, the whole home automation industry. It's, for me, the home automation is perfectly positioned to be the integrator for all the rest, and that industry is not quite a mature industry, and that industry is now today more focused on comfort and only luxury. But if you would translate into seniors, and especially seniors in connection with their families, this is enormous potential. But that industry is not in particular focused on our segment. By putting that together, especially, we make that visible and we make it scalable. And that's where I see the big opportunity. If you look at the whole IoT industry and you see what Europe is also doing in that, and the integration of everything, with regard to that, the whole real estate agencies today, have you seen many real estate agents that are just mainly focusing on providing housing solutions for elderly? Not many that I came across. Whole banks, how can banks come with innovative offering towards that segment today, whether it's for well protection? We've made specific interviews on that in the last few months already.
Insurance industry is also involved.
Absolutely, that is the whole funds today industry, especially in this buying versus rental. How could they restructure their portfolio or even offerings towards that, or even create new ones, and at the same time make sure that they keep their commercial risk as minimal as possible, and if you keep the commercial risk lower, that means that your investor needs to get less yields, because you've covered the commercial risk. The whole home care industry and offerings today that you see, the whole telemedicine industry, how to then connect better to all these individual apartments, shared spaces, and where you can provide easier access to services without nursing having to drive back and forth to all these different residences. Many potential. How the medical professional institutions can accommodate themselves towards this. Obviously, restaurants and home delivery. The pandemic has really exploded this industry. Well, how to really now integrate that with all the other different types of service that elderly can provide and connect that to home care. Tremendous amount of work to be done. Our pharmacies and the delivery is obviously very common as well. Communication industry today, we've seen, if there's one aspect that has been made so visible, especially when you saw this difficulties that the nursing homes were facing, is that social interactivity. Social interactivity managed by closed ones, your caretaker, where you can easily socially connect with your family, friends, neighbors, and so forth. The communication that has so much to offer in that, but it needs to be done towards a specific segment and integrated with other offerings. So then the whole service industry in general today, and then everything that has to live with delivery or postal service and so forth. Those are just the main ones that I'm thinking about now. But if you would add them up, those are huge industries combined. And we all are looking to say, how can we focus ourselves towards elderly? And senior housing has a tremendous potential in helping them to provide the right services.
Do you think that the traditional investors on real estate, even those who are moving for the senior living, they have this vision about the complexity of the industries involved? Do you think, my question is because sometimes on my consultancy work, I see traditional real estate investors moving forward to senior living, but not having this vision about the different industries involved. Sometimes this is crucial for the success of the projects, aren't they?
Yeah, and this is obviously I can speak about myself and the people that I've interviewed that I've exchanged with, and you will see so also on the previous interview on Senior Boulevard TV that there is indeed a lack of awareness. And what investors still, in general, types of what are really the qualitative parameters you're looking for, as well as value proposition fit for purpose on that individual local market, is something that there's really still lacking. Second element that we see is that many investors, they do not tend, and I'm not talking for the bigger investors, that they are confronted with the chicken and the egg dilemma. So let's invest in what we know, and everything that we know, we're very scared of that, which is normal, because obviously the more risk they take, the more they have to remunerate their investors. And it's sort of, it's a difficult situation. And what is basically the investor community looking for is that what would be common denominators that we can implement in different markets and that we can scale beyond the existing models already that exist. And I think if I would summarize that, that's really the key takeaways that I received out of my own experience, but as well as from all the interviews that I've assembled through Senior Boulevard TV.
You already mentioned what is Senior Boulevard today. We are talking about the future of the industry. What can people expect for the future of Senior Boulevard TV? What can we expect moving forward?
Yeah, basically what Senior Boulevard will mainly be focusing is on what is there to come in the future, especially coming from new models. So we are quite, the existing models and operators and offerings we are mostly aware of, but what is there still to come in the future? And that's where Senior Boulevard TV will scratch much more on the surface. What we don't want to have is face like some countries that have, like the Flemish part of Belgium, for instance, where we saw also in our past interviews that are they went very fast in generating new offerings, and that has created some vacancy rates. The crisis of 2008 also came out of the previous interviews of Senior Boulevard TV, is that a lot of money went into the industry, and it mainly went to things that they know and not what they don't know. So that means that we were confronted with quite large vacancy rates. And also the amount of societal impact was quite lacking. So how can we bring, and I'm coming back perhaps the beginning of our conversation, how can we to the best align offering with demand to the best, and really focusing on innovation and affordability? That is something today that, in my opinion, and what the expert that I've interviewed came up with, we haven't digged into that enough. And that's what we're going to bring forward more and more with Senior Boulevard TV in the coming months.
So it's a combination between a vision for the future in terms of innovation, but also a vision for the future in terms of spreading or showing very sustainable business models.
Indeed. So the sustainability is very important. And then look at all different aspects. If there are elements, whether that's a new way of operating, whether that's a technology, whether that's a new service, those are the elements that we will individually, or a financing model, for instance, to keep it affordable and all those stuff. Those are really the elements that we will be cherry picking and bring them more and more onto the platform, in combination that what we're already doing, like making every market opportunity a little bit more visible, so that the actors get more and more insights on the individual markets.
So I think this is it for this conversation. I don't know, how did you feel about being interviewed? So changing the seats, but one of the things we are promoting is a new face on Senior Boulevard TV, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that would be then you, Anna, so you have to get used to that. But it was weird from my perspective. Just normally it's me doing the interview, but it's nice to be also on the other side. So
Yeah. It's quite it's a different experience.
yes, and thank you for making that possible, Anna.
Welcome.
And I look forward to seeing you, much more of you on the channel. Anyway, that's what we'll be working on in the coming weeks. Huh?
Yeah, so people can expect some contents also speaking in Portuguese and for the Portuguese speaking countries markets.
I look forward to that, Anna.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.